Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. Our first historical highlight for the week is the 41 Puritan separatists who landed at Plymouth Rock in present-day Massachusetts on November 11th, 1620. The Pilgrims had set sail on the Mayflower in order to flee the persecution of the Church of England. Though they had originally planned to land further south, a supply shortage forced them to land at Plymouth Rock. Our next historical highlight is Samuel Seabury. In order to be consecrated as a bishop in the Church of England, Seabury, an American, had to travel to Scotland because he would not swear allegiance to King George III. After his consecration on November 14, 1784, Seabury became the first Anglican bishop in America. 5 years later, he reorganized the American Anglicans into what is now known as the Episcopal Church. Our final historical highlight for the week is John Witherspoon, who died on November 15, 1794. Witherspoon served as the president of the College of New Jersey, which would become Princeton University. He also opened the first Presbyterian General Assembly in America and was the only active minister to sign the Declaration of Independence. The Center for Christian History enjoys a strong relationship with the Christian History Institute, which publishes Christian History magazine. We hope that our listeners will take advantage of this free and valuable resource at christianhistoryinstitute.org. In this episode, Nick Walters, Director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Kaylena Radcliff about a recent bonus edition and an upcoming edition of the magazine.
Hello and welcome back to yet another great bonus edition of This Week in Christian History. We enjoy our conversations that we are able to have with Kaylena Radcliff, who is the managing editor of Christian History magazine. And we love getting a little insider, a little preview, little update of the magazine. We really appreciate very much our relationship with the Christian History Institute and all the great things that we are all trying to move in that same direction, right? And we're thinking about coming up with another tagline, Kaylena, which is the more you know, the more you grow.
How about I love it. Yeah, it's good.
Well, that was, that was worth what you paid for it. So don't let that bother us. Well, tell us what is in this upcoming magazine.
So we did just release a bonus issue of Christian History, and it is called, let me pull up the title here so I could tell you, Fasts and Feasts, a historical guide to the church calendar. So this does look a little different from our typical Christian History magazine because it is oriented as a guide. And what it does is it walks you through the church year. Our senior editor, Jennifer Woodruff Tate, who has, I believe, worked with you guys before for different classes. Yeah, she wrote this guide primarily. So she walks through all the content here. And she talks about all kinds of things. So here, I'll give you a little preview. So we have background in Jewish feasts and fasts that have informed the Christian calendar. And then she walks through the various seasons, such as Advent, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, the 12 days of Christmas, which actually comes after Christmas, which you'll learn about when you read the guide. We look at Epiphany, Ash Wednesday and Lent season, Easter as well, and then some other church calendar days such as the Ascension and Pentecost, Trinity Sunday, All Saints Day, and Christ the King, which is a newer feast. Yeah, and then she also walks through ordinary time and the saint cycle, which is called the sanctoral cycle. So all kinds of things. And we also try to cover it from various traditions. So not only while the perspective is more of like a mainline Protestant
Uh-huh.
perspective, we also are looking at the Catholic calendar and the Orthodox calendar. And so all that stuff figuring into this guide.
Well, so does the guide actually have, if I go to March or whatever, is it going to show me not necessarily this is what's happening on March the 6th, 2026, but is it going to say generally in March, these are the days and this is the X number of days? It's just like
Yeah.
moves around, right? Mardi Gras moves around, right? I mean,
Right.
because it's not always the same day depending on when Easter is. So how
Right.
does all
So
that
the
function?
actual guide kind of walks through the general seasons and when they start and when they end. So there's a couple of dates that that don't necessarily move, but everything actually does in the church calendar. It looks a little different from the calendar year because it does depend on um, the start of, well, it's different for Catholic versus Orthodox. So we have a little guide in the middle of the issue called our Christian year uh, calendar. We have it. It's a circle, and it shows you kind of how that time works out.
I got you.
So I would refer you to that to look at that. We do also have at the back of the guide resources. So if you want to look at what's happening on a particular day of the year, such as what saints are being celebrated this
Hmm.
day, we have several different links, and one for the Orthodox calendar, I
Sure.
think one for the Catholic calendar, and then one
Mhm.
for more mainline Protestant denominations. So all kinds of resources you can look up.
How about that? So if I am Orthodox and I want to make sure I know what is the day that I'm going to be celebrating whatever, is there's links to that? Are the links going back to Christian History Institute spot? Or are they going to other calendars of other groups?
So a lot of the links go in the recommended resources are outside of Christian history. So if you go to the back page and you can actually look at the magazine online and go right to the links there and click on them. So you can click on the various church. We have a listing of websites, and I'm just looking at it now, and it has all of all of these various church ones. So you could click on Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, and it would tell you what's happening today.
Gotcha.
And the reason that's the case is because it was too much to put in this,
I
this
can
guide.
imagine.
Lots of things that you can look at, but you can look at various perspectives and various traditions and how they celebrate each day.
Very cool. So that's part of what always great work that Dr. Woodruff Tate does on giving us the good information and helping us understand those things. So I guess technically what I could do, right, I could click on some of those links and I could figure out what's happening today or what's going to
Hmm.
happen next week. And I might be able to merge some of that together and say, well, if you're Orthodox, this is what's happening on Friday, but day after tomorrow, then this is a Saint's Day or this is some other piece or part that would
Yeah.
help you kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it is helpful, and it also so the guide too, it kind of walks you through the history of it as well. So it's saying here's how the church is traditionally celebrated, here's how these feasts or fasts or seasons have developed over time, and and in various traditions. So we're pulling at a lot of different threads here, and what the last article about the saint cycle is very interesting actually, because one thing that I found interesting is that cycle, the cycle of saints, because those feast days happen all year round
Mm-hmm.
during all these different seasons,
Right.
which is
Right.
the main church
They
calendar.
double
So
dip. Right.
so the discussion about, oh, how do we do that in a way that's not overwhelming to the main church calendar, that she does walk us through that a little bit as well.
We've got a unique and interesting podcast episode for this week because we're able to talk about not just as a bonus of the things that we get to hear back from our friends at the Christian History Institute, particularly through Christian History Magazine, but also we're kind of merging a future look about what is coming up in a soon to be released edition of Christian History Magazine, but also are merging into this conversation a bonus edition that all has to do with feasts and festivals within all different denominations of Christianity. So, as always, we are glad to have Kaylena Radcliff with us to be able to talk about that as in her role as managing editor at Christian History Magazine. So, Kaylena, thanks for joining us yet again.
Hello, and thank you for having me again.
How about that? You're about to be our frequent flyer. Okay, we don't give frequent flyer points, but if we did, you'd be in first class right now. How about that? Okay, that would work on that. So, our listeners are going to be able to hear as a part of this podcast what we have already recorded and talked about for the things for the feasts and festivals, a bonus edition of Christian History Magazine. So, so they'll already hear about that. But let's also talk about this next edition that is focusing in on Vatican II. And so
Yes.
that's the big issue, right?
Yeah, so this is our upcoming issue. We hope it will be available December 2025, early December, to read online and to purchase. So we will be covering the 60th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council of the Catholic Church. And this is an important issue, and I think it's important to talk about it, even though a lot of our readers tend to be Protestant leaning or Protestants, because this council actually does change a lot of the way that the Catholic Church has interacted with Protestants throughout in modern history. So I'll just walk us through the issues so you can hear a little bit about what we're covering. So we're going to start actually in the Reformation. We're going to start with the Council of Trent and how Catholics had to respond to the Protestant Reformation and some of the things that came out of that. And that will go up to kind of, I think, the 18th century, where we talk about the movements in history that are taking place at the time that also not only are challenging the Catholic Church, but just challenging Christianity in general and how Catholicism has responded to that. So that first article is written by our advisory scholar and contributing editor, Edwin Woodruff Tate. And so he's been a part of Christian history for many years and very valuable resource for the magazine.
And he's been two podcast episodes for us, nonetheless.
Oh, that's great.
Edwin's
yeah.
done a great job. So
yeah. So you are all familiar with Edwin.
We are. He does a great job.
His great massive brain that he keeps all that knowledge in. So yeah, we have him on this issue. We talk a little bit about Catholic relationship to state power. So how Rome and the altar versus throne is kind of what we talk about a little bit in the issue too in the beginning, and how that relationship between the powers kind of evolves and then sort of falls apart during the French Revolution and the modernization of the world. We also cover the First Vatican Council, which is important, and one of the major things that that comes out of the First Vatican Council is the definition of papal infallibility. So what's the Pope's role? What's his authority, and what can he define as official church dogma? So that comes out of that, and so this is going to be important to the next council. And also, I'm sorry, I forgot to say the authors of the previous two articles. So Daniel Moore writes our Altar Without Throne article that talks about state power, and the next one, called Winds of Change on the First Vatican Council, is by Kevin Schmiesing, I think is how I say his last name, but maybe he could tell me how it is. Yep. So then after that, we have Sean Blanchard writing about the modernist crisis. So leading up to the Vatican II, some of the problems with modernism and how the Catholic Church has responded to that. And that will lead us up to the First and Second World Wars, which changed a lot about how the Catholics, and I mean the Protestant Church as well, but particularly here, how Catholicism is interacting with the modern world and dealing with issues that are the evils of the modern world. I say, genocide, the Holocaust, problems that have come out of the world wars. Oh, and in communism as well. And then Nadia Lahusky does a really great overview of the actual Council of Vatican II. And yeah, you'll have to read that article because it talks about just how that came to be.
Sure.
And how it was kind of a surprise. Actually, it was interesting. Pope John the 23rd, when he becomes Pope, they weren't expecting him to do much, and he calls this council. So it's kind of like, an interesting start to it. And I think probably one of the most important points of the article is that the way that the council is formed originally by the Roman Curia, that's kind of challenged by the bishops who come, and instead it becomes more of bishop-led council. So the issues that the church is facing at the time they want to make sure they're dealing with those and not just kind of pushing something through that's not actually going to be helpful in their dialogue with the modern world. But of course, the documents that come out of that, the next article, Text Turmoil, talks about that and how the church has interpreted those documents, and some of the major debates that have gone on around the documents that are there. And that's just halfway through the issue. So we cover a lot. So the next articles are going to talk about more like how the council affected the way, Catholic practice and Catholic interaction with Protestants and Orthodox and religions outside of Christianity. So Barnaby Hughes writes an article about how popes have interpreted Vatican II, was starting with Paul VI, who's the pope who ends the council, and then we have the probably the most famous one that maybe people will be familiar with, John Paul II. It talks a lot about him, and then we talk about Francis and Benedict. And this is another interesting article how they've interpreted that. Next one is on ecumenism and Vatican II. So Tal Howard, or Thomas Albert Howard is how he's written in as the author in here. He talks about what that looks like now. We also have a really interesting sidebar on Gifts of the Spirit by Ralph Martin, which talks about the Catholic charismatic renewal movement. So
a lot of people are not familiar. Some people think that's oxymoronic, right? I mean, to understand that charismatic Catholic is a thing, right? But it is a thing. It was a thing, and we got started through part of that. And I think it's a fascinating part of Christian history.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had to get that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then next article is by Frederick Christian Bauerschmidt. He talks about how the reforming of the liturgy and the rites of Mass have been, interpreted and added into, how they do it. So the big thing with that is Mass in the vernacular, which, previously Mass would have been only in Latin, and so now we're talking about how that changed the way that Catholics experience Mass, and how Catholics have experienced their catechism as well. So that's a really interesting article. And we do have examples of both Masses in there that you can compare them, the Latin to the vernacular, which would be English for us. Jennifer Woodruff Tate, who has also, I think, been on for you, has written another article. She wrote about
a bunch. Right.
Not much, yeah.
No, a bunch. Yes.
Oh,
no,
bunch. Good.
Yes,
good,
absolutely. She's fantastic. I am a Dr. Woodruff Tate, both him and her fan. Okay.
Yeah. So Jennifer wrote about how Protestants. Just a very short article about how some Protestants had kind of responded to the changes in Vatican II, and she does it through the framing of an order in United Methodism, that kind of how they interpreted that. So that's interesting. We go on to talk more too about particular figures of Vatican II in our article by Jennifer Boardman called "Reformers of Rome." So there's some interesting people there. So people you'd be familiar with, like Joseph Ratzinger, who is Pope Benedict XVI. We talk about Henri de Lubac, who at first actually was suspected of modernism and was kind of censured, and his writings were censured, but brought into Vatican II as an advisor, and that helped really shape the council. Same thing with Yves Congar. Yeah, so other interesting characters there, and so that's a good article to read. And then finally, we do an interview with a Catholic and a Protestant. So Lucas Briola and Carl Truman, both professors of history, I believe, their impressions of how Vatican II, 60 years later, and how that looks, and how things were good, maybe things could have been different, and that's the issue. So it's a lot.
Wow. I mean, that's why there's a lot to talk about. And just so time frame wise, so people kind of keep in their brain, really the Council of Trent that kicked off in 1545 was the last big council until what we would now call Vatican I, right?
Yes.
Which was in the 1860s, 1870s, and that time frame. In
Mhm.
Vatican II, we're talking about 1963 to about 1965 or 6 or 60.
Yeah, 1965.
65, right? Okay, so i.e. the 60th anniversary, right? And so
Yes.
the magazine is really gearing around whenever Vatican II closed in December of
Yes.
1965, right?
Yes.
So
yeah,
that
we're kind of hitting that anniversary.
Yeah. No. Hey, look, that's why our podcast is all about this week in Christian history, right? Because of things that are actually taking place on that. So as this is released in November of 2025, you can be looking for hopefully within the next month, you will be able to have access to this. So Christian History Magazine is free. But it also doesn't mean as a nonprofit they aren't all willing to be able to have some donations come in to help out that cause. So remind us how people can have access to not only this magazine but edition, but others as well.
Yeah, so you can access the magazine at christianhistoryinstitute.org. You can download issues, and you can also donate to Christian History to receive the magazine, or just support our ministry, because everything we do is donation based. We print the magazine based off of the generosity of those who donate to our ministry. And actually, one of the great things that we do too is that we send our issues to incarcerated individuals to help teach them about Christian history, and that is a great ministry that we are very committed to, and that is supported by donations entirely.
Isn't that great? Very fine. Well, we know that we've enjoyed our relationship with you guys, and considered you great partners, and appreciative of all the work that y'all do, and the things that we steal from you. Okay, but at least when we steal it from you, we're telling you we're stealing it from you. How about that, right? And so if it's out there in the world, at least on our end, is grabbing it, right? Because it is from what we do in our Christian History Today social media posts. All of those, about 99.9% of them, are all coming from what is already produced by what you guys do, which has a heck of a lot more of things that are happening every day. So there's so many things on the Christian History Institute website that you can find learning modules that are there for anybody that wants to learn, things for children, things for a number of things besides or in addition to the magazine. And the magazine is might be the one that might get the most PR and might be able to have more people kind of know about them. But there's so many resources that are there, and it's such a great ministry. And so we're glad that there are people like you and others that we have already mentioned that are a part of that project, and a part of what you guys do in that ministry piece. It makes a difference. So
thank you. Yes.
Thanks for our time again today, Kaylena. So Kaylena Radcliff, the managing editor of Christian History Magazine, has given us some more good insight. Kaylena, thanks for your time.
Thank you for listening.
This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College, in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook at the Center for Christian History, and on Instagram at Christ Hist Today. That's ChristHistToday. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.